All right, so our presentation today is on risk best practices. And this is a subject that Steve Hansen kind of led into during our annual meeting that we had here a couple of weeks ago, and it was a great presentation for all I heard. But I was out cooking steak sandwiches. Hope you enjoyed those. I definitely did. Anyway, this subject is leading into an important direction. Our focus for the year in loss prevention for the trust, and some opportunities for you to get some resources from us and some interaction from us. And so we look forward to working with you on that. And we'd love to have any feedback that you have, questions or comments. I'll be sending out some documents with the presentation today to go along with that. And between Doug, Brent, and myself, we're going to be giving you a call and coming out to visit. Set up a time to do a best practices assessment. And so we're excited about this direction, and really we're kind of taking the training wheels off and moving into the next realm as it pertains to risk management and loss prevention. So the reality is real as we look at not just stories from the world or anything like that. From our specific membership in the trust, we have 550 plus local government agencies around the state, and they do a lot of tasks, and some of those are really dangerous, and some of them are not, and even the ones that are not sometimes causes some real grief. We've seen fatalities. We've seen auto crashes that have reached into the 8-figure cost range. Law enforcement exposure that continually gets more and more difficult as officer-involved shootings or other law enforcement interaction gets far more scrutiny than it ever has, and we see a trend around the country of many private insurers just absolutely refusing to take law enforcement liability. This is kind of what we saw in the 70s when the trust was created, when many of the private insurers just ran away from public risk because they saw it as really bad risk. We also see constitutional claims that if we understand constitutional claims, we know that if we deprive somebody of their constitutional rights, we don't have those immunities. We don't have those caps that protect us many times as a governmental agency. And so that exposes us to big stuff. Well, the peril is real, and those are things we need to be worried about and concerned about. But how do we go about handling these and making sure that we're doing the appropriate things to avoid those problems? Well, it really comes down to best practices. Are you doing all of the things that will help you avoid those? Sometimes things will come out of the blue, and we understand that, and that's the reason why all of us have insurance. That's why I don't think my house is going to burn down, but I'll be darned if I'm not going to have fire insurance on my house, because someday it might, just out of the blue. And so we protect ourselves financially that way by having good coverage, and we hope the trust has been a great partner for you. That's our goal. But beyond that, we have to be actively engaged in protecting ourselves, protecting our resources, and that really goes back to being a good steward for the public that we serve. And so there are a few things that we just have to do to be successful, and we want to help you. If you haven't implemented these things, we want to help you to implement those. If you have implemented these things, if you have implemented them, we want to help you make those better. And over the years, we've worked with you on a lot of these things, and built programs, and worked with you to train, work with your committees and your management on that. And that is, there's nothing different there, except our focus is increased now, and you can expect to see Doug, Brent, and myself out trying to help you out as much as we possibly can in building these programs. So you say, what is it? What are all these best practices? Well, let me tell you, as we took a look at best practices, how many best practices went in loss prevention and risk control and all of that are out there? Well, it numbers in the hundreds or thousands. There are many best practices. But for us, we narrowed that down to 10 basic categories with 3 steps in each one of those, or 3 specific things. And our goal is to go forward and help you evaluate your performance and see where you stand. Give you some ideas of things that you can work with, provide you with some resources to help out there, whether it's just a document or whether we might be doing some training. You name it, we're there to help. But here's what it is. We're gonna, and I'll send this form out with the email when this webinar is live on our website. But we're going to walk out with this form and walk through it with you and help you to understand where you stand as it pertains to best practices. This is simply a checkup. This is simply, how are we doing? And if we've got some areas of, I've done a few of these to start with, just some guinea pigs. Thank you, folks, if you're on today, that have done this with me, just to kind of test out how this process goes. But this is an opportunity for us to sit down and just have a quick heart-to-heart. Here's where we stand. Here's what we think you could do better. Here are some resources, and we're here to help you be better. So, and please ask questions if you have any of those. So let's dive through and talk about each of these sections. Management is such an important component of any risk program, any safety program. You can have, you can spend millions of dollars on a safety program, and if the boss doesn't care, that program's not going to be successful. It's just, I've seen it over and over again, and you can spend a very little amount of money, but if the boss cares about safety, if the boss cares about risk and conveys that to everybody in the organization, it's going to fly. It's going to work. And so management is a major part of this. So I actually I said there are 3 elements on each one of these, 3 questions that we asked. I threw a 4th one in on this one because I think it's important. Then that's the first one here. Designate a safety or risk coordinator. Do you have somebody that's responsible for safety? Is there somebody in your organization that at the end of the day, the boss, whoever the chief executive is, owns safety, owns the performance? But if that's the case, great. That person has the time and the resources to do everything associated with that. If not, let's delegate that responsibility to somebody, with the boss knowing that they still own it, but somebody that if there's a question, if there's a challenge, if there's accolades that need to be given, this is the person that is highlighted there for that. So designate somebody for that. It's everybody's responsibility, but at the end of the day, we need to have somebody there to make sure these programs are going the right direction. The next one, annual goals for safety performance, and we put a pretty good focus on this in the early part of the year, and we do think this is an essential part of being successful in safety and risk. Is to set some goals, and this review that we do with you, hopefully some goals will come from that. Hey, here's some areas where we're not performing as well as we are in others. So this is where where we're going to place our attention, and we're going to track those and measure those. So have some goals and track those and share those with the organization. Here's where we want to get. We want to have this year have 0 injuries. We want to have 0 workers' compensation injuries. We want to have 0 auto claims. Or maybe you're a big organization and you had 30 auto claims last year, and we want to get that down to 20 this year. Those are good goals to work on. but have something that we're focused and working together towards. Regular safety and risk reporting. This goes along with that. How are we doing? Are we doing better than others? And you'll notice that we provide several products from the trust to help you with that. Many of you may have received a workers' compensation scorecard this morning. As those went out and my email went crazy, I get a copy of every one of those. And the idea behind that is here's some metrics. How are we doing compared to the number of claims that we did last year, or the number of claims that we would expect over a longer period of time, and the dollars. We give you a goal in there as far as your expected losses, and that's just an actuarial number that we plug into a calculation, and it pops up and says, based on the type of risk that you have and the payroll that you have, we expect you to lose X number of dollars in workers' compensation claims this year. Well, that gives you something to look at. The goal behind this is regular reporting, so you know how you're doing, and we hope you take this into the rest of your organization and track some of those important metrics and share those. Hey, we're having an awesome year. Way to go, everybody. Or, hey, we've had some problems. We've had some setbacks. We've got to redouble our efforts to make sure that the second half of the year is not like the first half. Whatever it may be, let's be open and honest about that, and have those metrics mean something to our organization. Here's an interesting one. Have safety evaluated on people's annual reviews and workers' annual reviews. This is a pretty simple thing to do, to add a line on your annual review and make it equal in weight to the other things that you're reviewing. Performance as far as work output, quality of work, those types of things. Let's put safety in there so people know that if they have if they're going to get a raise or a promotion, whatever it may be, safety is a major part of that, and discuss that in the annual review. Hey, you didn't get quite as high marks on this because you remember that time I talked to you about not wearing your PPE all the time, or hey, you've done an awesome job this year. You had no near misses, no injuries, and remember we talked about when you went the extra mile and cleaned up that spill, or you did this or that, and you're always wearing your seatbelt. Whatever it may be, that gives us an opportunity to reinforce the importance of safety in our culture at the time when most employees are listening more than they ever are, because those annual reviews are important, because that determines what their compensation is. All right, the next section is on teen appreciation and recognition, and you can call this TAR, and you can call this TARP, or whatever you want to call it. It boils down to the incentive programs that we've talked about, and some of you may say incessantly talked about these things. We not only think they work, we know they work. We've watched the results as many of you have implemented a good, solid incentive program that involved all of your involved your team, whether it's everybody or just a specific part of your organization. You take them and you put them into teams, and you communicate, and you tell them how they're doing, and you celebrate the wins, and you cry together on the losses. And guess what? We do much better. And what we've seen over time is our numbers with our members that have done a program like we say here, has visible monthly results, frequent appreciation or recognition, and they're team-based. If they do that, their numbers change rapidly, not only in the number of incidents, but the cost of their incidents that they see. So pretty simple. We beat this one around a lot. But if you have questions, give us a call. Your account executives, the people that deal with your coverage, will be talking to you about this, because we've seen so much success in this. they're going to be focusing on this to help you with that. They want to have your premiums as low as they can get, because that makes their job a lot easier, and it makes the trust successful, and along with that, all of you are successful. So having appreciation is important. Safety committee, having an active committee that works towards safety and risk management is essential. And one of the major parts of that is top management participation. Does that mean that the mayor needs to be to every one of these, that the county commissioners or whoever the big boss is needs to be at every one of these? Well, not necessarily, but they need to be involved. They need to be there to write a check if a check needs to be written. They need to be there to give support where it's needed as well, and most importantly, to let everybody know that this is a value of your organization, and that we are going to work safe, and we're going to work to be better continuously. On this, safety committee should meet at least quarterly. We recommend monthly, because it's hard to really catch up on things if you do it a lot more than monthly. But at least quarterly, you should be getting together and keeping some minutes, keeping a list of your goals, your assignments, follow up. So when we get together, we're moving the ball forward. That's a pretty simple part of our day-to-day operations, but it's one that can really fall apart in a safety committee if we don't have those accountability steps in place. Communication is important. What's the safety committee doing? What have they done that's been successful? I've seen this a lot over the years, where a safety committee has just been killing it as far as the things that they're accomplishing, but they don't talk about it. They don't share these things with everybody in the organization to let them know, hey, we're working hard to make your environment safer. We're working hard to put the organization in a better position, so we're not risking our finances, risking our reputation by doing things that are riskier. So proper communication. Incident reviews, the next section. And here are the 3 steps, really simple. When we have an incident or we have a near miss, we should follow a process. One of those things is having a written requirement that says if you have an incident, it needs to be immediately reported to your supervisor. And that supervisor needs to report it to whoever the designee is, whether it's a workers' comp coordinator or your risk manager, whatever their title may be. It needs to go to a central location within a day, within a 24-hour period of that happening. Why is that? Well, that first day is really important in collecting information, to have a good incident review, making sure the person gets the proper care if they're injured, making sure information is collected in the case of an auto accident or other type of liability claim. So immediate reporting should be a written requirement. Thorough documented investigations, and I'll be sending out forms for this. And really, this is kind of a three-stage process. The employee, if it's a work comp claim, employee involved will fill out their form. Supervisor will do an investigation and gather the information, fill out their form, and then the safety committee or incident review board, whatever you may call it, will review that information and make a determination about this claim, about what the root cause is, and any corrective actions that might need to be put in place to prevent the recurrence of the incident. It's a pretty simple process, and probably the process where we see the least, not compliance isn't the right word, the least success probably would be the best word in doing incident reviews. Many times we'll see these incident reviews, well, there was nothing we could do to prevent this. Well, occasionally a meteorite comes out of the sky and strikes your building. There's probably nothing you can do to prevent that. But beyond that, most things have some steps where we can prevent that. Getting to a root cause is a fairly simple process. The example I like to use on this is, let's say you can see the lights in the background here. Let's say we've got a maintenance person standing on a ladder, changing out a ballast in that light, and the worker did not turn off the lights, did not isolate the electricity when they went to work on that. Worker gets shocked and falls off the ladder and injures whatever, their backside, falling off the ladder. So we're going to do an instant review on that. And we start asking the question why. And we keep asking the question why until we really get down to where it hurts. And in this slide, we have the onion there. We peel back the layers of that onion until we get to the root. We get to the heart of what really caused this. So why did this person fall off the ladder? Well, they fell off the ladder because they got shocked. Why did they get shocked? They got shocked because the electricity was not isolated. Why was it not isolated? Well, the employee did not isolate it for what reason? And we can ask a lot of questions. Was there a policy that said that we have to isolate any electrical or other sources of energy prior to doing maintenance on equipment? In the lack of a policy, well, there we go. What if we did have a policy and the employee just determined not to do it? We ask why. Why did the employee blow off the policy that we had? Well, it could be because the employee just blew off the policy because they didn't like it, or it could be the supervisor said, hey, just get the job done. I don't care what you have to do. In either of those cases, there's something that we need to do. Maybe the employee was never trained. That would have been a question to ask ahead of time. Why didn't the employee turn that off? Was the employee trained on the proper procedure? Did the employee have the appropriate lockout materials? Maybe they flipped the light switch to turn the light off, but somebody came into the room and said, "You need some light," and flipped the switch on as they were in contact with those wires. You can see how asking why will eventually get us to something that might hurt a little more. Hey, you know what? We haven't done our job in having appropriate policy. Hey, our supervisor didn't do a great job in ensuring that this policy was kept. Or sometimes it's the employee just blew it off. We've done everything that we're supposed to, and those are cases where disciplinary action may be necessary. But let's do a thorough investigation and come up with those corrective actions that will address the root causes. Because if we do, then we're not going to have that same accident again. Okay? It may be, hey, this employee, many times in these instant reviews that I see, we do a pretty good job of whacking the employee that was involved in an incident. Hey, this was dumb, but we don't take it beyond there. Maybe it's maybe this employee was dumb, but we didn't share the lessons learned with all the other employees out there to help them know that, hey, this is not a good idea to do it this way. Here's the policy, and here's how you have to do it. All right, moving on to the next section. Return to work. These may seem familiar, right? We sometimes feel like we're a broken record, but these are the simple things that make us function. These are the things that will prevent the most costly causes of loss that we see, and the things that will keep our employees on the job, working and productive, and keep us from losing our backside in lawsuits. Return to work. Have a policy and stick to it. We want to commit ourselves to returning people to work as soon as possible. I don't care who you ask in the industry. You can go out and ask anybody that's been involved at any time. One of the most important things you can do in workers' compensation is get the employee back to work as soon as possible. Part of that is just simply an equation. You are held more accountable. Your EMOD is affected more by lost time claims than a non-lost time claims, to a significant effect. So you can have two claims that are $10,000, and both of those claims, excuse me, I've been talking a lot. This is the third hour for the day. Both of those claims cost the same amount, but one had lost time and one did not. The medical only claim will have a 70% reduction in value when it comes to calculating your EMOD. And so you'll get charged for $3,000 against your EMOD, but that lost time claim will be charged the full $10,000 against you on your EMOD. So it's simple. Hey, it's going to cost us money to bring this person back to work and do a light duty job. Well, it may for a couple of days, and sometimes it's only a couple of days. Well, that's the difference between $10,000 and $3,000 is getting that person back to work. So commit yourself to doing that, and it will save you not just on this claim, but it'll save you for at least 3 years into the future on your work comp premiums. So commit to that and accommodate those. One of the questions we'll ask, do you have a record of accommodating restrictions? And we'll look at that through your claims. Are you working with the adjusters to accommodate those things? If you are, even though sometimes we realize, hey, we can accommodate this. This person, for whatever reason, could not be brought back to work. Sometimes we have some problem children that we have no choice but to not bring them back, or they did something really egregious and we had to terminate that employee. I do recommend that you talk to the adjusters prior to taking action like that. But we do realize that happens. But we want to be reasonable about accommodation. Are you coordinating with the employee, supervisor, provider, and adjuster? It's a team to get somebody healthy and back to work. Law enforcement doesn't apply to all of you, but it's definitely one of those areas that gives us a lot of concern from the loss prevention world. Like I said, these claims are becoming more and more frequent, not because we're doing a lot of things different in the law enforcement world, but they are definitely in the spotlight. The media, certain organizations have made law enforcement interactions primetime news, and things that we didn't see a lawsuit for 10 years ago absolutely are going to get a lawsuit, even if they're pretty clear cut that we were doing everything right and in the right. And so with that, we need to be a step above just doing the right things when it comes to law enforcement. So here are the questions we'll ask on here. Do you have an annual policy review with a policy service or specialized legal counsel? So using a service like Lexipol or other service to provide your policies and update those as case law and other legislative actions take place. That's an essential part of this to ensure that we have good policy that's not outdated. The next part, sworn officers are trained annually on the policy. What does that mean? In Lexipol, for example, they provide what they call a daily training bulletin, and it's a message that goes out to officers, and it trains them on a specific part of each policy every day through the year, and they're expected to go through those and answer a question or two and think about the scenarios so they'll make the appropriate decision when they're faced with that thing. Some of these policies are things they don't use every day. If it's a traffic stop, well, that may be fairly easy. But it's a use of force. It's something that they don't regularly deal with. We want to make sure that they're trained. So for those of you that have law enforcement and you're using a service like Lexipol, check their training. There's a report that you can run called a DTB, Daily Training Bulletin. Run that report and see how many of your officers, and it'll just give you a percentage, and it'll say 80% of your officers are done with this, or 30%. And if you're in the 30% or 60%, and you're not in that high, 75% plus of those officers, we need to ask ourselves some serious questions. Are we really taking these policies seriously, and are we doing the things that we need to do to make sure the officers are in a position to make the right choice, and we're in a position where we can defend those choices in the event that something bad happens. The last part of this is to apply, complete, and maintain third-party accreditation. In the past year, the trust entered into an arrangement with the Utah Chiefs of Police Association to help support them in their third-party accreditation program. This is not our program. It's the Chiefs of Police Association put this together as a way to have a third-party entity go in and do a review or audit of policy compliance. It's something that takes some effort, but what it is it provides us a third-party impartial review of how you're doing. It gives us some opportunities for improvement so we can make our organizations better. And at the end of the day, you get a nice award, and the trust will pay for the accreditation, and we'll go along with them and pat you on the back for making this great accomplishment. And I know many of you out there are either in process or you've completed this accreditation program. If you have questions about it, please talk to us. All right, self-inspection. This year, we are going to redouble our efforts to get out and do risk assessments from the loss prevention world. So Doug, Brent, and myself will be contacting you and saying, hey, it's been a while since we've been out and done a risk assessment. Can we go and walk through some of your facilities? And we don't have to crawl through every building, because at the end of the day, we can't do everything. We can go and we can give you a good guide on here's some things where we see regular problems. Here's some compliance things. You want to do this so OSHA doesn't give you a ticket, and things like that. But at the end of the day, each of our organizations have the responsibility to figure out how we're doing, to go out and regularly look at our facilities, walk through, do a documented inspection. That means something as simple as pushing the button on the exit sign to make sure that the battery hasn't died. So if the power goes out and the building's on fire, that exit sign's still going to light up. Those are fairly simple things that shouldn't take very much time each month, but it will help us avoid problems, keep people safe. And if the regulatory agency, if OSHA does show up, hey, the exit sign works. That's one less citation that I have to deal with, and one less thing I have to explain. Why wasn't this good? So put this in place. Have a reasonable frequency. If it's a building that's not frequently used by people, you may not have to be there as often as others. However, sometimes those unused facilities can provide opportunities for fires or other risks that an occupied building may not see as much. People ask me, how often should we be inspecting our playground facilities? And my answer is, it depends. If it's 40 below zero outside, I don't think you need to inspect your playground facilities until it warms up a little bit, or once a month, walk out there and say, yep, the snow's still 4 feet deep and it's 40 below zero. I don't see any tracks over to the playground facility. We're good. But when it's 75 degrees and the sun just came out and we've got 1,000 kids at our playgrounds every day, well, that type of facility might need to be inspected on a daily or weekly basis. Others that receive less use could be on a less frequent basis. But let's be reasonable in our frequency based on the use and the risks that we see there. Let's put that type of effort towards those. Are those hazards documented and corrective actions assigned? If I find a problem, do I write it down and do I make a work order or put it on a list, a spreadsheet? So we follow that through to completion. We don't ever want to find ourselves having an incident, having a child injured or something like that, and going back through our inspections and finding, yep, we identified this thing 6 months ago and we never fixed it. That's a terrible place to be. Not only from a legal standpoint and the money it may cost us, but hey, we knew about it and a kid ended up getting hurt. So let's take these things to completion. That's your safety committee should be looking at reviewing those on a monthly basis and making sure that we're moving forward. Sometimes they take time. Sometimes we've got to get budget money to do certain things, and they'll take a little more time. But let's not just put them on a back burner and forget about those things. Keep them on a list. And when you fix something, document it. We need to be able to prove that we're reasonable and prudent in the things that we do, and documenting corrections to problems is one way that we can do that. Yep, we had a problem, but we ran right out and we fixed it, or we took it out of service and kept people away until we were able to fix it. That's a great way to go into a complaint against us. Is we do everything right. Sometimes problems happen, but we will handle it appropriately. Safety and risk training. Of course, you know I like training because I'm on here babbling for 3 hours today. But we think this is an essential part of everybody's program, whether it's safety and risk training or whether it's job training, whether it's customer service training. All of those things are important, and more important as our labor force gets tighter and tighter. We want to have the best people we can. You know, I read a quote recently about somebody said, you know, that some companies don't want to train people because they'll get up and leave and go somewhere else. Well, what would you rather? I would much rather training somebody to the point where they're valuable and they feel better about their job and they don't get injured on the job, and taking a risk of having somebody come after them than have them you know, sitting there as a lump. So let's train them on their responsibilities. Then we can hold them accountable. So we have required training outlined for all of our job descriptions. Have a list of that and a calendar of what training. Are there certain things that we want to train on every year? Are there certain things that we only want to do this once every 2 years? Some of those are a legal requirement that you have to do an annual training. Some are not. Some are just a best practice. This is what we want to do, and it's a decision that you have to make. Is your training scheduled? And need to go in and verify that people are getting that. Do we have people sign off that they received the training? That's a pretty simple thing to pass around a sign-in sheet that says, this is the training that we had today, this is who did it, and here are the people who attended. It's amazing how quickly employees who are involved in an incident can forget that they had a certain training when they maybe bypassed a policy that we had. So get that documented, have it on paper, that what we've done. And like I said, from the trust, we have tons of resources that we can provide from these webinars. There are hundreds of recordings out there that can make it really easy to check a box as far as training goes. From webinars to the DVD library that we have, to live training that we do, to regional trainings. We're here as a partner to help you with that. But let's put it on paper and say what we've got. Here's a sample document that I'll send out to people. We call it the training matrix, where you put the person's job description on one side and all of the potential trainings across the other axes, and then put an X where that training applies to them. Put on there how often the training needs to occur, and then we build our training program around that. And I'll send a copy of this out to everybody as I send the materials out. This is by no means exhaustive. This is my best guess as you know, dealing with your organizations and being in safety and risk for a long time. This is my best guess as to what these specific job descriptions would be required on training. But I hope you take this document or something similar and work with it and build it. If you've got training that's not on here, put it on here. If you don't agree with me on something, let me know, and I'd be happy to go through that with you and discuss why I put it the way I did, and if I'm wrong, I'm happy to change that. I would love to have this be a shared document that everybody participates in. Vehicle and driver safety, next section. Number one cause of liability, loss at the trust. Almost every year is our automobile liability program. And you think about the tens of thousands of vehicles that we have running around the state, nearly 20,000 drivers. This is a major risk for us. So having a policy to qualify drivers is essential. If you don't have a policy, if you don't check motor vehicle records prior to hiring somebody, guess what drivers you're going to get. If somebody's got a problem with their record, the word gets around. Same thing goes with drug screens. Hey, these guys don't drug test. Hey, they don't check driver's licenses here. Here's a good place to go get a job because that problem on your record is not going to be checked. Many of us have a policy that says if you lose your license or you have a certain type of violation on there, you have to, like a DUI or something like that, you're required to tell your employer. Well, do they? I haven't seen a great level of compliance, because a lot of people say, hey, I got a DUI. I'm going to lose my job when they find out, so I'm not going to report that. So the second question we asked, are you looking regularly at your motor vehicle record reports for your drivers? And it's a really easy program that the trust provides for you. You give us a current list of your driver's license numbers and keep that up to date. And once a month, we'll send you out a report. And I think it comes out on the 5th of each month. And in a matter of a couple of seconds, you can look down and say, is there anybody on the watch list? That means that their driver's license has a problem. It's revoked, it's denied, it's whatever. That watch list, you should be checking that each month and taking appropriate action on that. You should have some guidelines as far as who do we hire or who do we allow to drive our vehicles, and what's the minimum level of or the maximum level of incidents and accidents that will allow somebody to drive. Because what we found is that only about 11% of all those 20,000 drivers that we have in our MVR program have anything on their record, any citations on their record. And if you have more than 1, 2, or 3 citations on your record, you're in the vast minority of people. So we've got to watch for those drivers and set up some good standards. The last part of this section is a vehicle inspection and maintenance program. And what we mean by this is, do we have a regular program? You may be a large organization, you have a fleet manager who is tracking maintenance on these vehicles. You may be a very small organization that has, one person. We have to say, hey, can you track how often we're maintaining the vehicles? Are we getting an annual safety inspection on all of our vehicles? And then are we doing pre-trip inspections on our commercial motor vehicles? Are we documenting those things? That's one thing that we see regularly, that people are not following the DOT requirements on documenting those pre-trips. Also regular inspections for our passenger vehicles as well. Are we physically looking at those and making sure they're in safe condition to operate? All right, sewer best practice. This is the last one. Sewer best practices. For those of you that have sewer exposure, that's about 135 of our 550 plus local governments around the state. But it's been one of our major liability losses over the years, have been sewer backups. And so we've found that these steps are really essential in having a good program. And I have a couple asterisks on here because some of you folks out there, especially some of the larger districts, they may follow a little different program. They have statistical methods that they go about on this, but so realize there's an asterisk there. We give some leeway there if you can show, hey, this is an equivalent program, it works just as well. it will definitely check the box on there for you. But here's the basics. 100% annual manhole inspection. It's a simple thing, but to go out and flip the lid on every manhole in your system and look in there and say everything looks great, or wow, there's some debris in there. We need to clean that out. Let's get the debris out right now. This section, I can see some obvious grease or surcharging there. We need to put this on a hot list to come and clean this section. And we also need to look at what's going on in this neighborhood, why this is happening, whatever the problem may be. So that's an essential part of that, is knowing what's going on in your system. Cleaning frequency is really important for the obvious reason that if we don't clean it, chances are over time we will have problems. But the less obvious reason really comes down to liability. If we have cleaned that section of pipe within the last year, and a problem happens, in many cases we're able to deny liability on that because you have been reasonable and prudent. You've done everything prudent to ensure that sewer flows freely. And so we look at cleaning frequency, and our recommendation is that you're looking at 2 years or less. Some people may go, whoa, that's a lot. Well, as we go and do these reviews, we're going to give recommendations. This is kind of the goal to get to, is in that 2-year range. But let's say you're at 5 years, and we want to set a goal. Hey, within 2 years that we're down to that range, or we want to get to a 3-year cycle on this to put us in a much better position to avoid that. We ask about hotspots and repairs. Do you have a program where you're going out, if you've got a belly or you've got a problem in a certain section of your sewer line? Is that on a hotspot program where we're cleaning it more frequently, or we're inspecting? Whatever the program that makes sense for that particular problem, are we doing that? A fog program, or fats, oils, and greases. Some of our major backup issues come from greases collecting in our lines and causing backups. Many of these are due to restaurants, and some are definitely due to just homeowners pouring the wrong stuff down the drain. But a lot of these are controllable by having a fats, oils, and greases program, where we're making our restaurants and other entities that could provide this type of material in our sewer system, making them put good best practices in. That could be as simple as a grease interceptor or other equipment that would handle that. And just an FYI on this one, this is not a question, but once a year we send out our sewer report card. And here's an example of this, what it looks like. We take your information, we send out a survey towards the end of the year, and then we compile the information and send out the report card. Pay attention to what this is. As I've gone and talked to a few people about this, they hadn't seen it. And so we want to make sure that we've got the appropriate people on the distribution list. But this gives you a comparison to everybody that's in the trust, those 135 or whatever the number is of sewer entities within the trust. You can compare yourselves to them. Do you have as many claims per mile of pipe or per 1,000 connections? We give you some good comparisons. So a large organization that has 100,000 connections, you can compare that to a small one that has 300 or 500 connections, and see how you're performing. So this is one of those metrics that we talked about. Oh boy, for having only about 10 or 12 slides, I've talked a lot today. I haven't seen a ton of questions on there, so I'm just going to throw out, before I hit the summary on there, if you have questions, type this in. We'd love to get out and sit down and chat with you about these things. This is really an opportunity for us to work together to get better. That's how the trust works. Is if you succeed, we succeed, and all of the local governments in the state that are members of the trust succeed together. So just to summarize, know what your risks are. Work together as a team. Don't take this all together. Build these programs. There are 10 of those, and if Doug or Brent or I come out and you get 60% on this, that's okay. What we want to do is identify where are the places where you can improve, and how can you get better, and then provide you the resources as much as we can, and really get people focused in your organization on that. We are here to help, and for all of us to continually improve. That's an important thing. All right, I'm going to look for some questions here. Yeah, will all the participants get a copy of the documents mentioned? Look like great resources. Yes, I'm going to send this out. I may not send out the giant volume of stuff. I'll send out the ones that we talked about in the presentation today. There are a lot of other things that we'll provide. I just hesitate to engulf you with too much paper. And so we want to go out and sit down and talk and say, here are a list of the different documents that, or here are the things that you could do better on, and here are some documents, and we'll just email those directly to you so you have exactly what you need. And those, yes, Debbie, those will be in electronic format. Let's see. How do I make sure we are all enrolled to get the yearly report cards? Okay, so on the report cards, the sewer, if you have not received a sewer report card, send me an email. If you have sewer, we've done our best to ensure that we've got everybody enrolled in that program, but occasionally we'll have a new member or one slips through the cracks, and they didn't, and for whatever reason, we didn't know that they, from our angle, the underwriters know, but from our angle and our list, that we didn't know that that you have sewer. You may not have gotten that. Send me an email, and we'll make sure to get you on that list, and we can send you a report card. It may be a generic one because we won't have your specific information there. Let's see. As far as the workers' compensation scorecards, those if you've had claims and you are, those generally go out to those that have, let's see, they're the 110 largest workers' compensation members of the trust. Below that, they have very few claims, and so if you find yourself in that category, talk to me and we can put together something for you on that. But if you are one of those larger entities and you're not getting a report card, that means that you haven't had any claims. So congratulations, good job. I wish we could send out just a big smiley face on that, but the way the system works, for that to automatically go out, there has to be a claim in the system. So let's see, anything else? All right, I think that looks like all of the questions that we've had. I know I talked a lot today. I hope we were clear about that. And I hope we can work together. You know, this is not something that that we're bringing down the hammer or anything like that. This is really working together as partners to help all of us get better. We want to sit down as that partner, and where you have challenges, help you as much as we can. Where you're doing a great job, we want to give you some accolades and pat you on the back for doing the good things. So, all right, I don't see other questions. Thank you so much, folks. We appreciate your membership in the trust. We appreciate your partnership, and we look forward to working with you today and always. And I hope you can go out and have a safe day. Thanks.